So, we welcome everyone for today's morning discussion from Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, and the last chapter, 19th chapter of first canto. We'll be concluding our discussion today. So, let's start with the prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Nashtake Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Vena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatai Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we welcome everyone for today's concluding discussion on the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. First canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that has 19 chapters and can be divided into 3 sections. First 3 chapters, or to put it in a more simpler way, the setting of Srimad Bhagavatam, which we are reading, is at Naimisharanya, where around 88,000 sages have assembled to perform 1,000 years long sacrifice to reduce the ill effects of Kali Yuga that has started. With that objective, they have assembled for 1,000 years, and there they assign or they select Srila Sutta Goswami as their representative to speak on the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. And 88,000 rishis, munis select Shaunaka Rishi as their leader to ask questions on behalf of the rest of the community to Sutta Goswami. Therefore, first canto, first chapter opens up with 6 questions of Shaunakadi Rishi asked to Sutta Goswami, whose answer goes up to the 3rd chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, or the first canto. Then the 4th chapter begins, where now Shaunakadi Rishi asks 3 questions. The first question, history of Srimad Bhagavatam, what inspired Srila Vyasadeva, although he had already compiled every literature, then what inspired Srila Vyasadeva to write again Srimad Bhagavatam, to compose Srimad Bhagavatam. Therein we study about the interaction and conversation between Narad Muni and Srila Vyasadeva, and where we also heard about the past life of Srila Narad Muni. The second question Shaunakadi Rishi asked was about the appearance of Parishit Maharaj, about his kingship, and how did he renounce, or why did he give up his kingdom at a very young age of 60 years? Please understand that was Dwapar Yuga. Kali Yuga 60 means retirement age. At Dwapara Yuga, that was not the retirement age. That's the second question. And then comes the third question, where Hare Krishna. Can we just take care of the washing machine? And then comes the third question, and the third question was about Shaunakadi, about Sukdev Goswami. In what situation Sukdev Goswami, who was self-realized from the time of his birth, how Sukdev Goswami, despite of walking away from his family, Srila Vyasadeva again came back and met with the King Parishit Maharaj. What was the incident? What led to that interaction? So 7th chapter onwards up to literally the 18th chapter of the first canto discusses about Parishit Maharaj. While discussing about Parishit Maharaj's appearance, the discussion began from the 18th day of war, the night, and then it goes to the 7th and 8th chapter. And while talking about how Lord Shri Krishna wanted to leave Hastinapur, then Mother Kunti comes, then Uttara comes, then Yudhishthira Maharaj requests about staying back at Hastinapur for some more time. 9th, 10th, 11th chapter is a detour to the conversation that was actually originally happening. Question was asked about the appearance of Parishit Maharaj, and when Sutta Goswami spoke about how Lord Shri Krishna protected the womb of Uttara, which means Parishit Maharaj, at that point in time, Srila Sutta Goswami took a detour, not a detour actually, but he got absorbed in remembering Krishna so much so, he forgot the question and he went on speaking about Krishna. The 9th chapter was departure of Vishmurtama, which is nothing but the glories of Lord Shri Krishna. 10th chapter is departure from Hastinapur, is again about Lord Shri Krishna. 11th chapter, arrival at Dwarka, which is again about Lord Shri Krishna. And then when the 12th chapter begins, when Sutta Goswami has kind of gone into deep meditation about Krishna, and then we spoke about how Krishna was welcomed at Dwarka, and when he kept quiet, and then Shaunakadi Rishi said, very nice, please continue. However, we would also like to know about what happened after Parishit Maharaj took birth. And that's how the 12th chapter begins, which goes up to the 18th chapter, where Parishit Maharaj birth, his activities as a king, and there again in between, the discussion comes about Lord Shri Krishna's disappearance, Pandavas departing, 13th chapter Dhritarashtra goes home, and then Pandavas returning to the forest. All the discussion comes. Now you might wonder why Sutta Goswami had to go into so much details. Please understand very, very important thing. Let's make 2 points here. The very first point, talking about the detour that happened in 9th, 10th, 11th chapter. The nature of love is such, when you love somebody, the moment you remember that person, you cannot stop talking about that person. How many have had that experience? Please raise your hands. I don't expect much hands to be raised because we would not have much experience unless we have really, really fallen in love. And I'm not talking about the girlfriend and the boyfriend relationship, but I do remember when I was studying in my undergrad, there was a boy staying on my floor. That fellow, anytime and every time, if we happen to meet him, only subject matter that will come out of his mouth was his girlfriend. He was 24/7 talking to his girlfriend. Even when he would go to bathroom, still he was talking on phone. Seriously, I'm not joking about it. You can always hear. So, anyways, so point here is, this is our mundane relationship. I don't want to talk about that. That's pathetic. I would like to speak on a spiritual relationship. When you really have deep sense of affection and gratitude, when you understand that such and such devotee has helped you and is helping you, raising you in Krishna consciousness, that person becomes literally like a soul. And a classic example is Srila Prabhupada. One historian, a Christian philosopher and a historian, very noted personality, he wrote a comment. Although Jesus appeared almost 2,000 years ago, in 2,000 years, so many books have not been written about Jesus. Christianity is one of the largest religions in the world. ISKCON, if you call it Krishna conscious religion, is insignificant in scope as of now, and only 50-year-old movement. Yet the books glorifying Srila Prabhupada have already outnumbered books glorifying Jesus. And therefore we are these days celebrating Smaran Utsav, and on this coming Sunday we'll have the opportunity to hear from His Grace Sankarshan Das Adhikari Prabhuji. When I wrote an email, he replied back, I am eagerly looking forward for this opportunity. The Prabhupada disciples love speaking about Prabhupada. You just tell them and they become so excited. So if you want to please them, you want to please Prabhupada disciples, ask them to speak about Prabhupada. They become extremely happy. And that's what something happened to Sutta Goswami. Anyways, that was the first point. Second thing, there is no difference speaking or glorifying Krishna and glorifying Krishna's devotees, pure devotees, is one and same. Both purifies our consciousness. They both have the same result on our consciousness. So therefore, there was a little detailed discussion about what happens, Pandava, etc., etc. Finally, we come to the 18th chapter, where we saw Kali had descended, Parishit Maharaj punished Kali, and then in 18th chapter, we saw how Parishit Maharaj himself got a little bit influenced, and he happened to commit a mistake, and wherein he was cursed by Shringi, the son of Samik Rishi. Now the 19th chapter begins with how did Parishit Maharaj responded to that curse. When Samik Rishi heard from his son Shringi that he has given this punishment, Samik Rishi regretted, and he sent his disciple Guru Mukha to Parishit Maharaj to convey the message that you only have 7 days to live. So how did Parishit Maharaj responded? That's the discussion in the 19th chapter. And then finally the third question, how and when Sukdev Goswami met Parishit Maharaj is also addressed in the 19th chapter. 19th chapter, let's come to the 19th chapter. That was a quick overview of what's the discussion of the whole first canto. Very, very, very beautiful and important discussion once again. Let's begin our discussion with 2-3 key points. Then we'll look through the verses. Please try to put yourself in Parishit Maharaj's situation for a second. It's very important. I make this point often. I probably would have said to all of you also. To give an example, when you go and watch a movie, when you're able to identify yourself with the protagonist, not the protagonist, generally protagonist is in the writings, let's say hero, or let's say when you're reading a novel, when you're able to identify with the character in the novel, you will see your degree of absorption is greater. Absolutely, that would be the fact. So if you want to really relish Srimad Bhagavatam, scriptures like this, let's say even Bhagavad Gita, you have to identify with the protagonist. You have to identify with the main character, not with Krishna, but the representative. In this case, put yourself in Parishit Maharaj's situation, then you will see how Srimad Bhagavatam speaks to you. So please understand Srimad Bhagavatam, Parishit Maharaj's situation right now. So let's put all of us in that situation, and I'm going to put you through 3 different scenarios. Let's see what all you're going to respond. So at this point of time, can I request all of our participants to switch on the camera? So I'm going to ask you for certain things. You have to give me up and down, thumbs up and down, okay? So that'll be a quick interaction. So please understand Parishit Maharaj's situation right now. Parishit Maharaj has been cursed to death. How do we expect Parishit Maharaj to respond? How do you and I would respond? The first thing, it is already proven in the previous chapter that Parishit Maharaj was innocent, yet punished. Innocent, yet punished. Not a small punish, such a big punishment. How would we respond? Think about it. Second thing, he was not only punished, Parishit Maharaj was over-punished. To say Parishit Maharaj, would lose his wealth, Parishit Maharaj would, should perform or should call in 1,000 brahmanas and feed them for the next 1 year, that's okay. But to give him a death sentence is an over-punishment. How do we react when we are over-punished? What is the first response comes? Well, how do we react when we are innocent yet punished? That's the first and 2 scenario. Third scenario, how would we react when we are punished by our junior or subordinate? Yes or no? All the 3 conditions met in Parishit Maharaj scenario. Shringi was just an 11 or 12-year-old boy, and he is giving a punishment to the king of the whole world. Is ridiculous. Sorry for that word, but it doesn't make sense. It's preposterous. And that's what Parishit Maharaj is going through in this scenario here. So, how did Parishit Maharaj respond? So, ideal consciousness and ideal aspiration is what the main theme for today's subject. And let's take a look. Let me share the screen. We'll read out 1 or 2 verses, and then we'll go back to the chapter. This is verse number 14 of 19th chapter. How did Parishit Maharaj responded? Here Parishit Maharaj represents the ideal consciousness of a Vaishnava. And what he says, Dasyeva meghasya paravareshu vyasakta chittasya griheshu vikshnam Nirvedamulo dvijashaparupo yatra prasakto bhayama sudatte tasyeva meghasya paravaresho transcendental. So here Parishit Maharaj is saying, he's expressing his gratitude to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Asakta chittasya graheshu bhikshanam, because I had become so attached to my material life, to my family, to my wealth, to my kingdom, to my citizens, that Krishna, knowing the fact that I was going down towards a hellish condition of life, therefore, aghasya paravaresho, Isha means the all-controller, which means the Supreme Lord. Lord Shri Krishna, by his all magnanimity and kindness, have put me in this untoward situation to destroy my material attachment. Nirvedamulo dvijashaparupo, and that Krishna's mercy have descended into my life. Dvijashaparupo, in the form of a dvija, shaparupo. Rupo is in the form of a curse by a Brahmana. Yatra prasakto bhayama sudatte. Like this, Parishit Maharaj says, let's read the translation. The Supreme Personality, God at the control of both the transcendental and mundane worlds, has graciously overtaken me in the form of a Brahmana's curse due to my being too much attached to family life. The Lord, in order to save me, has appeared before me in such a way that only out of fear I will detach myself from the world. I have no other option left, but because of fear of the death, now I should detach myself from my family life, from this world. Can we imagine this? Therefore, I'm calling it as an ideal consciousness. Not only that, will have a detailed discussion on this verse. I'm just giving you a little prelude here to our discussion. Let's go verse prior to this, text number, no, not prior to this. Yeah, prior to this, text number 13. What does Rajo Vacha, what does Parishit Maharaj say? So what happens in this whole chapter? Let me give you a division of the chapter, then I'll quote this text number 13 here. So chapter has around 40 verses. The first 7 verses, Parishit Maharaj response is described, wherein he renounces, goes to the bank of Ganges or Yamuna for that reason. From text number 8 to 24, Parishit Maharaj meets with sages. Sages from all over the world assemble to greet and meet and depart Parishit Maharaj back to home, back to Godhead. 25 to 28 verse, Sukdev Goswami enters, and 29 and 31, Parishit Maharaj receives and welcomes Sukdev Goswami, and the final set of verses 30 to 40, Parishit Maharaj inquires of Sukdev Goswami. So let's go back to our text number 13. So sages have assembled and they have come to meet with Parishit Maharaj. And when they come to meet with Parishit Maharaj, what did Parishit Maharaj said? Text number 13 talks about it. Let's read out. Rajavacha aho vayam dhanyatamanpanam mahattamanu grahaniya shilaha rajñam kulam brahmana pada sauchat durad vrishtam batagarya karma. In this verse, and there are sequence of verses, we'll see the same theme, where Parishit Maharaj is glorifying, is expressing his deep gratitude for all the sages who have assembled to bless him. Aho vayam dhanyatamanpanam, how fortunate I am. Mahattama anugraha. Mahattama means the pure devotees of the Lord, or the best of the personalities. Anugraha, by their own causeless mercy. Shilaha, they have come here to give me their favor. Ragyam kulam brahmana pada sauchad. Although such personalities do not like to mingle with the princely class, the royal class, which means the kings, because we are contaminated with a lot of affection for material life. So such sages do not like to come and spend time with us. Durad vishtam badagarya karma, because we perform condemnable activities, yet anugraha shilaha, anugrahaniya shila, yet they all have come here to give them mercy. So please think about it. You might be wondering, what's the big deal? Parishit Maharaj is a devotee of the Lord. To glorify the Brahmanas is his duty. Let me ask a question to all of you. How many of you have experienced, if somebody insults you, blasphemes you, hurts you, then we not only become inimical to that person, we also become inimical to the people associated with that person. or at least we feel offended by the whole of community to whom that person belongs. How many of you agree with that? So if somebody is a friend of that person, we would also stop talking to the friend of that person. Yes or no? Please understand, here Parikshit Maharaj is put into the situation by the curse of the Brahmanas. And the same Brahmanas have come to meet Parikshit Maharaj. Parikshit Maharaj could have beaten them away, thrown them away, get lost. You rascals, because of you I'm here. And now you have come to destroy my last 7 days. Think about it. This is what a conditional living entity would do. Of course, I'm a little exaggerating in our response, but we would not talk to that person. And look what is the response of Parishioners. What does it indicate about Parikshit Maharaj? Again, we're talking about ideal consciousness of a devotee. It's a lofty principle, but yet there could be some improvements that we can make at our level. You will see the first thing, there is no envy in the heart of Parikshit Maharaj. Why there is no envy in the heart of Parikshit Maharaj? Therefore, I first read text number 14 to all of you. Not text number 14, yeah, text number 14. Because Parikshit Maharaj could see the hand of Krishna in his life. Because he knew everything is happening by the will of the Lord, there is no question for me to become envious to the instruments of my own karma. Well, in the case of Parikshit Maharaj, they were not instruments of karma, that was the will of the Lord. But in our case, the language that we'll use, that we should not become upset with the instruments of our own karma. So therefore, Parikshit Maharaj, having a full faith on Lord Shri Krishna, having that strength of knowledge and relationship with the Lord, he was not envious of the sages. And because he was not envious of the sages, he was able to take shelter of the sages. And he paved his way back home, back to Godhead. Just because somebody from that community blasphemed us, it is highly immature for us to blame the whole community. Just like what happened recently, an unfortunate situation which is happening in India, because one MP or one parliament member, I believe Nupur Sharma or whatever politicians, made a comment about someone. The people are now going ahead and speaking ill about the whole community. You know, this is how. So if you see, there is narrow-mindedness, there is broad-mindedness. Except for devotees, you can never be broad-minded. And even as a sadhaka, we struggle with our narrow-mindedness. We can sometimes even have a discussion only on how we are the victims of narrow-mindedness. And not only a narrow-mindedness, there is an external theism, there is an internal theism. Externally, we act God conscious, but internally, our consciousness is not yet accepted God consciousness. Our behavior and our actions in different situations, we still act as atheists. Of course, I'm not making a general statement, not saying to all of you, but many times for neophyte sadhakas, that's the situation they're faced with. And next thing, which this chapter highlighted, this was the subject matter discussion on ideal aspirations, ideal consciousness. And another very beautiful subject which is highlighted in this chapter is the ideal aspirations. What should be the aspiration of a devotee? Text number 15 of this chapter. Tammopayatam pratiyantu vipra Ganga cha devi dhritachittamishe Dvijo prashashta kuhakas takshako va Dashato alamgayata vishnugataha. 3 aspirations are described by Parikshit Maharaj, which should be the aspiration for every devotee. Oh, my bad. Not the 15th one. That's why I'm thinking there is something wrong in Sanskrit I'm reciting. It's text number 16 actually. Text number 16. What is aspiration? Text number 16 talks about Punascha bhuyat bhagavati anante rati prasangascha tadashayeshu mahasyamyam piyami srishtim maitriyastu sarvatra namo dujebhya. Punascha bhuyat yam yam piyami srishtim. Third line. So Parikshit Maharaj says, if I have to take birth again, bhagavati anante, I should never forget Lord. The very first desire of Parikshit Maharaj. If I have to take birth again, and he's making a request to the sages to bless him, that if I have to ever take birth again, I should never forget the Supreme Personality Godhead. Second, rati prasangas chatad ashrayeshu. Tadashrayeshu, one who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality Godhead, which means the devotees of the Lord, let me have attachment to them. Rati prasangas chatad ashrayeshu, that's the second aspiration. let me have attachment, affection for the devotees of the Lord. And third, Maitri astu sarvatra namo dvijebhya. Maitri means friendship, astu sarvatra, which means everyone. Let me have friendship with everyone, devotee, non-devotee, every living entity. Just like Saint Francis of Assisi, a movie was made about the life of this great personality. And it was a very beautiful song. If you haven't heard it, please heard it. If you understand the concept of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, you will experience ecstatic emotions when listening to that song. Brother, sun, sister, moon. I don't remember the lyrics right now. I believe the movie was also titled as Brother, Sun, or Sister, Moon, like that. Nonetheless, if you go and Google it out, Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon song, Saint Francis, very, very beautiful song where it is described how Saint Francis of Assisi considered every living entity as his brother and sister. Something like that, Parishioners Maharaj is indicating. Maitriyastu sarvatra namo dvijebhya. Let me have friendship with every living entity. These are the two main themes. And the third theme of this chapter is how to take shelter of a bona fide guru. These are the main three themes of this chapter. Now, I'm just going to make a little slight change in my presentation today. I'm giving you different nuances of how we can study Srimad Bhagavatam. Today, I'm going to make another point about this chapter, which I haven't done for previous chapter, but while you're reading, you can do it. Just like Bhagavad Gita, when you open a copy of Bhagavad Gita, in case if you're studying Bhagavad Gita along with me, you might have seen that we go in a certain way that helps you to remember and memorize literally whole of Bhagavad Gita with an objective. Whenever you are facing any challenge, it'll be very easy for you to figure out which section of Bhagavad Gita I should be reading to reconcile my doubts. Similarly, you can do it Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, the way to do it with Srimad Bhagavatam, of course, this will take a time for me to explain, but I'll make a very short point right now. We'll maybe take this subject maybe in future sessions. What you can do, how you're going to do that to make this subject matter more practical for yourself, you can give a title, your own title to the chapter. Or you can say, kind of define an objective. What objective this chapter fulfills? So I'll do this for this chapter. Who should read this chapter? In what situation one should read this chapter? Of course, we should read Bhagavatam, Nityam Bhagavata Seva. But when should I pick up first canto, 19th chapter? When should I read 19th chapter? One who feels has been cheated, had been betrayed. When you feel that you have been cheated or betrayed and your mind has become agitated, you're filled with anger and you're putting blame to others, that is a time you want to open this chapter and read for yourself. Because when you will read about the response of Parishit Maharaj to the curse to die by somebody who was junior to him, subordinate to him, while Parishit Maharaj was innocent, and third, which was an over punishment, yet Parishit Maharaj, being innocent, yet over-punished, and also by a subordinate, yet Parishit Maharaj did not say even a word for Shringi, did not develop any sense of remorse towards the Lord. Why bad things happen to good people like that? In that situation, this is a chapter we can read. And like this chapter-wise, you can make a theme and the whole Bhagavatam will become again alive for us. So let's go to the subject matter, because I've already taken 30 minutes for an introduction. I'll have to be a little short with the chapter now, because I want to give some time to our participants to also have a question answer on this whole canto. So I'll give you a summary now. I'm not going to read the verses because I want to highlight some key points again. It's a beautiful chapter again. So the text number 1, Parishit Maharaj acknowledges his mistake. Text number 2, Parishit Maharaj, in fact, now he says, I deserve a punishment. If you read text number 2, he says, in fact, I'm going to read out the translation where Parishit says, I now desire without reservation that the calamity come now, for in this way I may be freed of the sinful action and not commit such an offense again. And here comes although I have discussed few lessons already, but I didn't mention explicitly, but now you can make a note for one of the lessons, first lesson for today. First lesson, one of the initial lessons, although I've already discussed few lessons, but text 1, Prabhupada in the Prabhupada writes, the repentance is natural for the good man like the king. So if we are not repenting on the mistakes that we do, so there is something wrong with us. That's the first point. Second point is about responsible living. Why Parishit Maharaj is desiring for a punishment? Because if a king does something Or let's say if a father or the mother does something wrong, everyone else gets a reaction for it. Yes or no? For example, let's say a person in the family commits a thievery and he gets by the police. Isn't that everyone is going to get punishment for that? You had an emotional crisis. So whenever a leader does something, the crisis is faced by everyone. For example, let me give you a real life scenario from the modern history. Second World War. There's too much noise coming from outside. Don't want to tell the people here. For example, Second World War, 1945. Second World War ends when America drops bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So when America had already performed that Oppenheimer had done the successful testing of the bomb, according to the historical records, America had sent a message to Japan that we want unconditional surrender, which Japan rejected. So then again they had a meeting at Germany where Germany had already fallen. Then again there was a meeting in Germany with the allies, and then they decided, well, this is too much because it was ruled by the princely class. So the Kshatriyas would not surrender. Considering that, then they passed on the second telegram saying that, okay, we want unconditional surrender of your armed forces. Royal class can continue to rule, but armed forces to surrender. So when this message telegram reached to, they have already had the telefax that time, or whatever fax machine or telegram thing. So when the message reached to the Japan royal order, the meeting happened. And that time the king made a decision, no, we can never surrender. And they thought this is a weakness of the opposite party because they are expecting a defeat at our hand. Therefore they're thinking, let's come to a negotiating table and we will not negotiate. And they did not respond. When they did not respond, it was clear that Japan is not willing to concede to the demands of America and the Allied forces. And America went ahead and dropped the first nuclear bomb. I believe it was on Nagasaki, or Hiroshima, either way. And 4 days later was another 2 days or 4 days later, another bomb was dropped. And then again, the whole Japan was kind of a crisis. 2 cities have completely got wiped off. And at this point in time, nobody was aware of the future reactions that's going to happen because of this bomb. Even the American scientist community was not aware. They were aware there will be a radiation, but the impact of it was not known. What, for generations is going to be there. So then at that point in time, some people in the army were radical minded. They said, no, we will not surrender now because they have destroyed us. We're going to have a full-scale war. And the other side was saying, no, you cannot do it. They've already dropped 2 bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. If the third bomb is dropped on Tokyo, the whole royal class will be destroyed. Who are you protecting? And then the king at that point of time decided, well, I've already made a big blunder because of which so many people have died, millions of people have died just within few seconds of the blast. And the nuclear bomb blast was such, when the blast would happen, everything would get evaporated. Your steel structures would get evaporated, the bodies will get evaporated. There is nothing left, was such as the reaction of the bomb blast. And the king decided that we surrender. And there was a final attempt of coup against the king, but they failed. So long story short, king surrendered and heavy fine was put on Japan. They cannot have armed forces, etc. But what did the king do? This is what I wanted to make. According to the Japan tradition, again, is very closely related to Vedic tradition. If the king concedes defeat, he will take responsibility, and according to Japanese tradition, he's supposed to commit suicide. So what happened with the king? A very interesting point he made. So there is this sword which comes down the heritage from the dynasty, which the king would use to perform this rite. They call it as a rite. So he took that sword right in front of all the remaining ministers. He killed himself. While killing himself, he said, my death is my appeal. What is the statement is mentioned? My committing suicide or my death is my, a repentance, a way of repentance for the mistake that I did to my civilians, to my citizens. In other words, the king took the whole responsibility And that's the point being mentioned as a second purport. And the point is because the king made a mistake. Look what happened, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, etc. So here the same thing is mentioned, and Prabhupada has a beautiful point. You can read out in detail. So we should learn to take responsibility of our actions. We should not pass the buck. Generally, at our end, when we do a mistake, the very first thing we do is excuse. Yes or no? How many of you have had that experience? When somebody comes and tells you you're mistaken, the very first thing we do is excuse. Again, please understand there's an external theism, there's an internal theism. Internally, we are not yet God conscious. There's a lot of atheism, psychological atheism we undergo. We speak very lofty philosophy, Krishna Prema every morning. We want to take darshan of Krishna first, follow Krishna consciousness. Text number 3, Parishit Maharaj says, I deserve a punishment because I have caused a problem, or I have committed an offense to Brahmanas. And Lord Shri Krishna, Namo Brahmana Devaya Gomamnitaicha. So why Parishit Maharaj is requesting for punishment? And that's the third lesson. The point is nip it in the bud. When you have a certain wrong action or behavior, if you address it then and there, then it does not fructify more. But if you become relaxed and lax and let that activity happen or behavior happen, then it can become insurmountable. Text number 4, Parishit Maharaj was informed about the curse. How did he react it? Very interesting. Parishit Maharaj had a smile on his face. He said, oh, I happily accept the curse. Text number 4, Parishit Maharaj says, so translation. While the king was thus repenting, he received news of his imminent death, which would be due to the bite of a snake bird, occasioned by the curse spoken by the sage's son. The king accepted this as a good news, for it would be the cause of his indifference toward worldly thing. And how Parishit Maharaj was able to give such a incredible response? Because he had already prepared himself by accepting the responsibility of the mistake and saying that I deserve a punishment. You getting the point? If he would not have said that I deserve a punishment, this mistake is mine. Let's briefly talk about 2 characters from Srimad Bhagavatam who were cursed to death. One character who was cursed to death, Parishit Maharaj. Another character who was cursed to death is Kamsa. Yes or no? Kamsa, when he was taking his sister Devaki to the bride's house, suddenly there is an announcement, Akashwani, and the 8th son of Devaki would kill you, Kamsa. So please, this is a homework for all of you. I'm not going to do it because we don't have that much time or deeper analysis, but please do a little analysis of the response that Parishit gave and Kamsa gave. Parishit was cursed, imminent death, immediate death, 7 days, only 7 days. Kamsa still had 8 years to live, because at human level you cannot have more than one child at a given time in 1 year. So 8th son means the 8th year. Kamsa still had 8 years to live. How frightened Kamsa was. How agitated was he. The tears that he was shedding was a crocodile tears when Devaki was leaving. Oh, my sister is leaving. Immediately took out the sword to kill our Hare Krishna. Something happened to internet again. No, don't touch it. It's working. I got disconnected. It's working on my mobile internet now. Fine. It should be fine now. What was I making a point? Kamsa and Parikshit. Kamsa became agitated, disturbed. How can I? And Kamsa deserved all that. He was such a sinful person. And secondly, look at the Kamsa's reaction and Parishit Maharaj's reaction. We'll discuss, as I discussed in the beginning of the chapter, Parishit Maharaj, the sages came to meet Parishit Maharaj. Now, how did Kamsa react to the newborn child? He became so inimical and envious of all the newborn kids, because one newborn child going to become the cause of his death. He gave on, and he passed on the order. He gave the order to kill all the newborn kids. So, Parikshit and Kamsa, you can do your comparative study as time permits for all of you. And how did he respond? Text number 5, 6 talks about he decided to take to sannyas order, accepted vows of sannyas. 5, 6, 7 verse talks about it. And he went to the bank of Ganges or Yamuna. That's how it's spoken about. And text number 7, purport number 7, Hare Krishna. Why bandwidth is still so low? So, Hare Krishna. What was point I was making? Text number 7. So, Prabhupada in text number 7, purport 7, makes a very beautiful point. And that's another lesson for all of us. And the lesson is material world is a dangerous place. And Prabhupada writes, the conditions of the material world are so made, I'm reading the purport, text 7, are so made that one has to commit sins willingly or unwillingly. And the best example is Parishit Maharaj himself, who was a recognized sinless, pious king, but he also became a victim of an offense, even though he was ever unwilling to commit such a mistake. Something very, very important. If somebody ever questions you on Krishna's integrity towards dharma, when Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 9th chapter, Apichesu duracharo bhajate mamananyabha. Like Arjuna raised his question, my dear Lord, I cannot accept. You are saying somebody commits durachar, not durachar, sudurachar, the most abominable activity, and you are saying bhajate mamananyabha. Agar that fellow is engaged in my devotion service, he is Mahatma. Arjuna says he is Duratma. And then Krishna says, Shipram Bhavati Dharmatma. And then Krishna says, declare boldly Name Bhakta Panushyati. Why Krishna is saying that? I want you to connect those 2 points, Bhagavad Gita, and this particular point Prabhupada is making here. Please understand the nature of material world we are in. The saying as it goes in English, to err is human. Literally, you should take it as a Shastric Praman, because here it is mentioned, isn't it? Nobody, even a sinless Parishit Maharaj committed a mistake, committed an offense. Take an example of Pandavas, take an example of Mother Kunti. Didn't she made a mistake? Without looking back what charity Yudhishthira Maharaj had brought, she very confidently said, can you sit down peacefully and stop making sounds? Very peacefully, Kunti Maharani, without turning back, she said to Yudhishthira Maharaj, distribute, as if Yudhishthira Maharaj had got Mahaprasadam. I'm talking the case of Draupadi, isn't it? She made a mistake and she regretted. Did Yudhishthira Maharaj made a mistake? He played a dice game. That's first mistake. Far much more make a mistake is he put Draupadi on stake when he lost himself. And Draupadi had to go through such an insult. And a very interesting thing is, Yudhishthira yet again went to play a dice game again. When he knows that he cannot win. Take an example, Arjuna, Bhima, Nakul, Sahadev, Bhishma Pitamaha. Vidurji came into this world because of mistake. Yes or no? Because Vidurji, as a Yamaraj, punished Manduka Rishi. So for that mistake only he came. Take an example of anyone in this creation. We are talking about Mahajans right now. Even the pure devotees are not spared by the conditions of material world, even where they make a mistake. Dashrath Maharaj, the father of Lord Ramchandra, made a mistake. But please understand, how did the devotees react to those mistakes? Nowhere in Ramayana you find Dashrath Maharaj being criticized by Lord Ram. Lakshman is a different personality. He represents a great anger for the interest of the Lord. But neither Bharat nor Shatrughan nor the citizens of Ayodhya blamed or criticized Dashrath Maharaj. All the mistake was of Dashrath Maharaj. Nowhere you find the family members of Pandavas cursing Kunti, because of you, Draupadi become a wife of 5 husbands. Nobody blaming Yudhishthira Maharaj or cursing him repeatedly because of you. Yet at the end of the war, everyone wanted Yudhishthira to be the king. Yet Bhimsen did so many blunders, because of which he got caught by the Nahusa, who had become the Ajgar. You remember the incident when Nakul Sahadev went to fetch water by the lake, and then the invisible voice said, no, you should answer my question before you drink. They died, Arjun died, Bhim died, yes or no? Everyone, that's the result of the mistake. Who is there does not commit a mistake? The question is not making a mistake. Question is, how do we react to mistake? When it comes to a mistake done by us, we seek for forgiveness. When mistake is done by others, we take all our revenge. मन में जितना भी खटास था, हिंदी में कहते हैं बहती हुई गंगा में हाथ धो लेना. Those of you understand Hindi, what it means. When somebody has got into a trouble, then you also take advantage of that trouble and give him 1 or 2 on his right and left cheek, like that, So please understand, what is a devotee's attitude? How does devotee behave? Everyone makes a mistake. No one is there who would not make a mistake. When Mahajans could make a mistake, Parishit Maharaj could make a mistake. What about little jivas like us? Text number 8 talks about how the sages appear. Now, text number 8, when it says sages appear, it's something indicates very, very important. It proves Parishit Maharaj was innocent. It proves Parishit Maharaj did not offend Brahmanas, because if Brahmanas were offended by Parishit Maharaj, then Krishna would have got offended. If Krishna would have got offended, then why would Krishna inspire the sages to go and give their association? To have association of the devotee is very important lesson. At the final moment, it's a sign of a great blessing of the Lord. If Parishit Maharaj was really an offender, then he would not have received mercy of the Lord in the form of sadhu sangha. Considering his unintentional fault, acceptance of punishment, and decision to renounce everything or become more serious in Krishna consciousness, reinstated him in the position of a true sadhu. Text number 9 and talks about different names of the sages who assembled, and text number 11, how did Parishit Maharaj receive sages? That is being discussed. He offered his respects and words glorifying all the sages. And how should we offer respect? That is text number 11. Very important. We don't have any of the co-hosts today here, right? If in case anyone of them is there, please let me know so you can share the screen. So text number 11 talks about culture of respect. How did Parishit Maharaj receive the sages? In our tradition, we do not touch the feet unless somebody is our teacher or somebody is our guru. I mean, you can touch the feet, that's okay, but we don't allow anyone to touch the feet. That's the point. So in our culture, in our tradition, more than touching a feet, we put our head on the ground and we offer respect. And Prabhupada writes in the purport, the system of bowing the head to the ground to show respect to the superiors is an excellent etiquette which obliges the honored guest deep into the heart. Even the first great offender is excused simply by this process, and Maharaj Parishit, although honored by all the rishis and kings, welcomed all the big men in that humble etiquette in order to be excused from any offenses. Who did offense to whom? Parishit Maharaj is thinking that I offended the Brahmanical community. And Samik Rishi was thinking, I offended Parishit Maharaj. Samik Rishi didn't thought that I was offended. Parishit Maharaj never thought I was offended. This is the nature of a devotee. And they both are thinking, we offended the other party. Text number, and an interesting thing is, everyone else is thinking, Brahmana is offended and the king is offended, right? So the community members of Brahmanas, not community members, the relatives of Brahmana, like Shingi, the immature boy, the narrow-minded person, he thought my father is offended, while father never thought to be offended. So that's the difference between broad-minded and narrow-minded people. Text number 12, he informs all the sages about his decision of, spending 7 days, 7 nights in dhyana or in meditation on the Lord. And in that way, he kind of takes a consultation. So text number 12 teaches a very important lesson, importance of consultation. And Prabhupada writes, very beautiful point. You should mark it for yourself. This would be tested again and again in our life, at least if you're a leader in ISKCON handling certain responsibilities. Any decision, Prabhupada writes, however important, should be confirmed by some authority that makes the matter perfect. This is the golden line from this chapter. Very important. Text number 13, Rajo Vacha, we already read this. The fortunate king, indeed, we are the most grateful of all the kings who are trained to get favors from the great souls. Generally, you consider royalty as a refuse to be rejected and left in a distant place. That's how he reacted to these sages, glorified them. He was full of gratitude and respect. Therefore, Prahlad Maharaj says, Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavati yankinchana sarve gune satra samasate suraha harava bhaktasya kro mahadgana manoratena siddhavato bhahi. Only a pure devotee of the Lord, or only a devotee of the Lord, you can qualify as a pure devotee also, can have all the good qualities. And his heart is full with so much gratitude and respect. And I already spoke about two things we can talk about. One is, in terms of the Brahmana community who offended Parishit, he didn't have any inimical attitudes towards them. Therefore, he was grateful and respectful. Second thing, dealings between Grahasthas and Sadhus. He was no ordinary Grahastha. He was a king of the whole world. He did not have that arrogance with him, thinking that the sadhus, they live on my charity. I care for them. So they coming to me is like paying homage to the king. What's a big deal? Why should I speak some words? No, that was not the case. So that's text number 13. Text number 14, then he expressed his gratitude towards Lord Shri Krishna. We already read this verse also in the beginning. Just like His Holiness Bhakti Swami Maharaj said, who was diagnosed with a very serious, advanced stage of cancer. Every part of his body was paining. Yet he made a comment that I would never ever trade my situation for anything. In other words, I would never ask Lord to trade my situation for anything. Although externally, bodily, I'm very painful, but in my consciousness, I'm totally stooped with Krishna Prema. That's the point here. So that's text number 14. And then text number 15 onwards, our Parishit Maharaj says that I only desire that you all can continue singing the deeds of Lord Vishnu. And then text number 16, he shares his ideal aspiration, which we also saw in the beginning of the chapter. 3 things he requests. My dear sages, I only make a request. Please bless me that if I have to take birth again, I should never forget the Lord. I should have attachment to the devotees of the Lord, and I should have friendly disposition towards all the living entities. And text number 17, he sat down in meditation. And text number 18 describes how the Devatas become very pleased by Parishit Maharaj's decision, and they offer, do Pushpa Abhishek to Parishit Maharaj. And a very important lesson here, Prabhupada writes in the pulpit. Devatas are always pleased when they see Krishna's devotees surrendering more and more to the Lord. Why and what it indicates? It indicates that everyone is subservient to the Supreme Personality Godhead. Brahma, Shiva, Indra, Ityadi, everyone, they become extremely pleased. That's the text number 18 talks about. Text number 19 talks about the sages approved Parishit Maharaj's decision to fast until death. That's a point which is mentioned. The sages become joyful. And text number 20 talks about, text number 20 translation. O chief of all the saintly kings of the Pandu dynasty, are strictly in the line of Lord Krishna. It is not at all astonishing that you give up your home, give up your throne, which is decorated with the helmets of many kings, to achieve eternal association with the personality of Godhead. So, very beautiful point Prabhupada writes in the purport. So it's a lesson we're driving from the purport, and the lesson is bitter truths of materialistic life. Prabhupada in the middle of the purport writes something very interesting. Prabhupada writes, Prahlad Maharaj, while praying to Lord Narasimha, said, "O my Lord, I am very much afraid of the materialistic way of living. I am not the least afraid of your present ghastly ferocious feature as Narasimha Dev." Then Prabhupada describes, this materialistic way of life is something like a grinding stone. How many of you have an experience of that atta ka chakki, which our grandmother used to have? On top, you put some grains and then you grind. So next time when you see that grinding machine, please understand, you are the grains put into that grinding machine, and Kal Chakra is grinding you. खिच 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 इसलिए सभी व्यक्तियों का दिमाग आज agitated रहता है. That's the reason there's so much stress and anxiety. We are filled with so much stress. So like that, this is mentioned that we are tossed by the horrible whirlpool of the waves of life. Text number 21, sages decides to stay. They came to pay homage, respect to the king. Now they decide to stay. Now this is something very interesting. Why would sages stay to witness the most violent attack? One of the first terrorist attacks, where Takshak was the terrorist who was going to attack a saintly king in a public place, attack with him with his poison. The poison was like a fire that will burn Parishit to ashes. Why would sages stay back to witness such a violent act? Isn't that a violent act or not? And sages deciding to stay back has a more to it than we can think, because sages knew now is the time for Srimad Bhagavatam to descend. Now, through Parishit Maharaj and Sukadeva Goswami's conversation, we all will get to hear about Krishna. And they also wanted to see Parishit Maharaj go home, back to Godhead. So as sages, they were not afraid of death. In general, nobody, if there is a dying person in your house, relatives will come, meet him and go away. But nobody wants to stay next to dying person. Yes or no? So the devotees want to stay next to dying person. They want to remind that person. Either they want to remind that person or they want to get reminded themselves. Just like Prabhupada, when he was on his final days, Prabhupada said, don't think you will not have to face what I am going through. Remember that this would happen to everyone. Text number 22-23, then king praises all the sages present there. And then text number 24, Parishit Maharaj asks two questions. Please tell me, what is the duty of everyone in all circumstances? Second question, and also particularly, specifically, the duty of a person who is about to die. What should one here chant? That will be a specific question asked to Sukadeva Goswami. But here, Parishit Maharaj is asking, what should be dharma of one in all the situations? Particularly the one who is about to die. And now, after this question, text number 25 onwards, Sukadeva Goswami enters. 25, 26, 27, 28 talks about Sukadeva Goswami's beautiful bodily features. 16-year-old boy enters the arena, enters the place where Parishit Maharaj and hundreds of sages have assembled. As soon as Sukadeva Goswami enters, everyone gets up from their place. Can you imagine? Prabhupada writes in one of the purport, age is not the parameter to honor a person. A person is honored for his achievements, not for advanced age, except for Brahma, Narad Muni, Vyasadeva, and few other personalities. Everyone got up to receive Sukadeva Goswami. And by age, if you see, the most youngest man in that assembly was Sukadeva Goswami. And everyone got up to honor Sukadeva Goswami like that. So what was happening at that point of time, Sukadeva Goswami, by a common man, kids and the woman were considered to be a mad person. He was naked, no piece of cloth on his body. His hairs were disheveled, long hairs. He was adbhut. There is no question of taking bath. Like that. So he was wandering, but yet Prabhupada writes, he was somebody whose beauty was covered by, just like fire covered over by smoke. So only devotees knew that fire, but the ordinary man could not see that fire. So the kids and the woman were running behind Sukadeva Goswami, throwing stones at him, thinking that he's a madman. But when they saw all the sages, respected sages, and the king of the whole world, Parishit Maharaj, getting up from their place to receive, they retreated. Oh, we have committed a great upgrade. That's all discussion in few verses. And then text number 29 to text number 40, Parishit Maharaj inquires from Sukadeva Goswami. Sukadeva Goswami sits down, and then Parishit Maharaj begins to ask him. Text number 32. What did Parishit Maharaj said? Parishit Vacha Ahovatya Vayam Brahman Sassevaya Shatravandavaha Krapyatiti Rupena Bhavadvistirthakaha Krataha. Parishit Maharaj said, O Brahmana, by your mercy only you have sanctified us, making us like unto places of pilgrimage. By all your presence here as my guest, by your mercy we who are but unworthy royalty become eligible to serve the devotee. So, the scriptural injunction is that Vidhi Pranipatena, one should accept a spiritual master. But Prabhupada writes in the 31st purport and 32nd purport, but we cannot approach the spiritual master unless we are truly humble. And let me tell you a story, which I told the other day also. I'll come back to the story in a short while. Second thing, one is humility is very essential while dealing with the seniors, with your Shiksha Guru, Diksha Guru. And second thing is, humility means what in that relationship? I'm a fool, number one. I don't know anything. Don't go and show your intelligence and prowess, which is also given in charity to us by our seniors only, by our Guru only. And second thing, the inquiries that to be made. We should only make serious inquiries to our spiritual authorities. So humility, that's a whole subject matter in the last concluding verses, where Parishit Maharaj shows that level of humility. What's the importance of humility? Let me give you an example. This is a story which comes from Radha Kund, our most celebrated place in the whole creation. And just some time ago, there's a very recent story where there lived a Siddha Baba, very, very advanced devotee of the Lord, had a great taste for chanting of the holy names of the Lord. So one man who grew up in a Brahmanical family, very learned, knowledgeable in the four Vedas, Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, etc., etc., after fulfilling his all family responsibility, when he became 50-55, he decided to renounce, take to Vanaprastha stage, move to Vrindavan. Now he wanted to take an initiation. So he wandered around and he learned from somebody that there is a very advanced personality living in Radhakund. He went and approached him and said, I'm so and so, I have accepted you as my Guru, kindly accept me as your disciple. The Guru said, get lost. Bhaga diya. The man came back again. The man came dozens of times, but the Guru did not accept it. Finally, when he came one more day, then Guru said, okay, I'm willing to accept, but I have a condition. Please go and find someone who is lower than you. Please go and find someone who is lower than you. The man thought, and the Guru said, the prospective Guru said, I'll give you a week's time. 1 week, find out somebody who is lower than you. Man said, Are, what a big deal. I am a Vaishya, highly learned. I'll find somebody from the Shudra class. So he thought, there are so many toilet cleaners, those are street sweepers. I'll go and catch any one of them and tell him that I'll feed you prasadam. Just give me your 2 hours of time and I'll bring it to my Guru and tell him, see, he is somebody who's lower than I. So he went to a street sweeper, and when he went to a street sweeper, he saw him sweeping the streets of Govardhan. And then suddenly a thought came into his mind. He said, Arey, how can I call this person lower than I? He is the person who is rendering direct service to Lord Shri Krishna and Srimati Radharani. He is cleaning the place he is cleaning Vrindavanam. He has an eternal service. I don't have a service. And he said, no, he is not lower than I. Now, because the most lowest person was not lower than he, then there can be no other human who could be lower than he. Because he became put out, who can be lower than I? Who can be lower than I? Like then few days passed off. Then suddenly he saw the cow. He said, I cannot find anyone in human species, but what about animal? Cow? She is lower than I. She is not even in a human life. So he went to grab a tail of the cow or the horns of the cow to bring cow to the Guru. Then he thought, oh, how cow? Cow is the most worshipable. The cow, she has taken birth in this dham. She is a dhamvasi and she is most worshipable to the Lord. How can I say? How can I? No, this is not possible. So he left the cow. Then he saw the monkeys. He thought, oh, monkeys. No other animal can be lower than monkeys. Let me catch a monkey. Then he saw the monkeys and he thought, oh, how can monkeys? Monkeys are also greater than I because they render so much service to the Vrindavan, Brajavasis. By stealing the chashma, they are maintaining the livelihood of so many. So how can monkeys be lower than I? I have no service in Vrindavan, but even they have service in Vrindavan. Like this, 7 days passed by. He could not find somebody lower than him. The 8th morning, when he went to attend the nature's call, when he passed stool, then he looked at his stool. And he thought, oh, one thing which is lower than I is my stool. I should take my stool to my Guru and tell him I have found something lower than I. And then suddenly a thought came into his mind. And he looked behind. He had gone into the forest to attend to nature's call. And he looked behind. He saw the pigs moving around. And for pigs, this is their favorite food. Then he thought, oh no, even the stool is greater than I because the stool gets to render service to the Dhamvasis because stool is maintaining the pigs. And then when he was thinking like this, within the stool he saw the worm. He thought, oh, finally I have found somebody who is lower than I, lower than stool, that is the worm. He lifted the worm which was moving around in his stool. He thought, okay, I'll take this to Guru. Then he thought, oh, even this worm is not lower than I. Why? Because he, by eating the stool, is maintaining the cleanliness of Vrindavan. He maintains the cleanliness of Vrindavan, he renders some service. Even he is not lower than I. And then he rushed to his Guru. And he went to his Guru and told him, Gurudev, I have found somebody who is more lower than I. Gurudev said, who? He said, I only. There is no one lower in this whole Vrindavan. And Gurudev said to his disciples, prepare the yajna. Today this man will get initiated. So humility is the foremost quality to understand spiritual subject matter. That is what Parishit Maharaj shows here. And to conclude with, in the end, Parishit Maharaj asked Sukadeva Goswami in the concluding verses, my dear Sukadeva Goswami, yash shotavyam mato japyam yat kartavyam nabi prabhu smartavyam bhajaniyam va bruhi yadva viparyayam. Text number 38. What should I chant? What should I remember? What should I worship? What I should not do? Please explain all this to me. And this question becomes the subject matter for your second canto. That's how the second canto will start, where Sukadeva Goswami will now tell Parishit Maharaj What should he hear? What should he chant? Whom should he worship? And what he should not do? But however, before Parishit Sukdev Goswami would answer, the second canto, first chapter, first verse begin with Sukdev Goswami glorifying the question. Varyani Shataye Prashna. What a beautiful question Parishmat Maharaj have asked. With this question, Loka Mangala, it will bring auspiciousness for everyone, and it is approved by all the sages. Like this, the 19th chapter of first canto ends. In essence, in this chapter, we saw how Parishit Maharaj responded. Hare Krishna. Somebody got unmuted. What was I saying? So in this chapter we saw, which is again a very beautiful and important chapter. I said this chapter should be read. The opening remarks were this chapter should be read when you feel you have been cheated or betrayed. Your heart is filled with a lot of negativities and you're losing respect and you're becoming doubtful. Why somebody can behave like this to me? Read 19th chapter. What happened with Parishit Maharaj? I don't think so Krishna would put us through such kind of a test ever. How did Parishit Maharaj respond to a situation where he was overpunished while he was innocent and punished by a subordinate? And then we saw Parishit Maharaj went to the Ganges or the bank of Yamuna. And how did he receive the sages? He did not even had iota of, that these brahmanas are useless. These people don't know, how to punish. They over-punish. No such kind of, mindset Parishit had. So easy for us to become victim to it. He offered us gratitude and respect, made an humble inquiry, and he also offered his gratitude and respect to Lord Shri Krishna because he was able to see Krishna's hand in the situation. And then, we saw how Sukdev Goswami enters the scene, and we saw the subject matter of humility. So three main topics of this chapter was ideal consciousness, ideal aspiration. What should be an aspiration of devotee? Even if I have to take birth again, I should never forget Krishna. I should have attachment to devotees of the Krishna, and I should be friendly to all. And the third subject matter was how should we approach one's spiritual master? How did Parishit Maharaj approach Sukdev Goswami? Was the concluding last 8 verses, 32 to 40th verse of this chapter. With that, we come to the conclusion of the 19th chapter. Hare Krishna. Kindly excuse me to give you a super fast summary of this chapter. I should not even went and referred any verses today because the session would not have come to a conclusion. After all, we are doing an overview. This hopefully should help you with your systematic study and detailed study. But when in future, one of the objectives of this program that we are doing is to take you forward to what you call as Bhakti Vedanta. Bhakti Vedanta, right? No, Bhakti Vaibhav first and Bhakti Vedanta. So those who would qualify for Bhakti Vaibhav, to help them do Bhakti Vaibhav, there will do a lot of detailed study. But at least if you study now, so that will also help you. So with that, my little humble attempts to serve you all by repeating what I've heard from Srila Prabhupada, from my spiritual master, from my seniors, and whatever I have understood from the reading of Srimad Bhagavatam first canto. So please accept my sincere gratitude to each one of you for giving your time and attention for all these months and weeks and coming sincerely week after week to hear from us on the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Thus concludes the purpose of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, and concludes the first canto. Hare Krishna. Any questions, any comments, any clarifications? If somebody wants to unmute, they can unmute. If any questions are there, they can raise their hands now. Okay, so till the time you think of any question, so can I request everyone to switch on their cameras now? So at least I get to see the moon-like faces in the words of His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj. Let's see the moon-like faces of all our devotees who are here. So, how many of you would like second canto to resume? Or you have had enough of Srimad Bhagavatam? Over digestion or over intake. So, shall we start second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam? So, please raise your hands. So, we understand that we'll have it. I might still continue to do it, but I'm just asking because we have an offline audience. We may do it for offline audience, but just to see if online audience are interested. Okay, thank you. So we do have some inputs here. How many of you would like to have a little break? एक दो हफ्ते की छुट्टी मिलनी चाहिए भाई, लगातार चल रहा है. और if you think we should start from the next week itself, please raise your hand those who would like from next week onwards. I don't promise you because I am not available for next week. In July, mostly I'm traveling literally more than half of the month. So I'll have to ask His Grace Devtipati Prabhu. And again, this is a little celebration week. So I don't know how much his time will permit. I'll check. So if in case either of us is available, we'll have the session next week like that. So looks like most of you are fine to resume and continue with second canto like that. So just to give you a little bit of prelude about second canto. So there are less stories in second canto, there's more philosophy, okay? I'm telling your friend. Now in second canto, you will have repeated Virat Roop Darshan. From second canto to the third chapter, you will at least have 3 Virat Roop Darshan. And when you study second canto, you might get Virat Roop Darshan in your dreams also. So time and again, that discussion will come back again and again. So that's going to be little. So until now, I would say we have been pampered. Now, second canto, so we are expected to grow up. So second canto, we're gonna, in the first initial chapters, there are gonna be chastisement. Sukdev Goswami is gonna begin with some heavy dosage or renunciation. Very beautiful subject matter, first chapter, second chapter. And let me tell you, it's gonna be little difficult. So you will have to be really attentive because again, it's an overview. To go to the whole concept of krama, mukti, and etc. Different paths will be described: karma path, jnana path, dhyana marg, etc. Would be a little difficult, but we'll see how it goes about. So that's it at my end. If any questions are there, we can take it. If not, we conclude for today. Hare Krishna. So thank you. I don't see any questions for today. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Hare Krishna.